Here's a great story of how I spent too much money on my Project 240. It all started with a simple brake upgrade. I put on R32 calipers on the front and Z32 calipers on the rear. These new calipers look great behind the Volk rims and will help me stop better at the track. So I went to VIR with my new brakes, and it was a lot of fun, but the car was seriously underpowered. I mean, I couldn't even keep up with my friend's RX-7 or NSX. I wanted more power to keep up with my friends, so I did some research on this engine and I found out exactly what I should do with it. I yanked that slug out and sold it on Craigslist. There's all kinds of different engine swaps you can do with the 240, it just depends on your budget. And my budget said RB25DET with the turbo. By the way, everyone should just order a front clip once in their life. It looks great in the driveway. This new RB engine makes 125 horsepower more than the stock engine I just removed. Needless to say, I was really excited to get this going. All you need to put this engine in is new engine mounts. Now normally, if I was smart, the next scene would be me putting in the RB engine and driving down the street, but that's not how it happened. Meet Rob. Rob is a really good welder, and he suggested to stitch weld the body. I figured why not, with all that extra power, that's a great idea. And that's exactly what he did. He stitch welded every seam in the engine bay. Now we just couldn't leave the stitch welds out in the open because they would rust, so we knew that we'd have to repaint the entire engine bay. If it's one thing I really admire in cars, it's a clean engine bay. So I figured if we're already going through all this trouble, why not smooth everything out and make it look perfect? After a lot of welding, grinding, and sanding, it was ready for primer. Lots of primer. Bam! Finally! Fresh paint. Things were looking good. The engine bay was clean as I imagined it would be. So now the only thing left to do was to put back in the engine mounts. Now the next step would be to put the RB engine in, right? Well, with the engine bay looking so nice, I thought, hey, maybe we should do the same thing to the interior. So I quickly stripped the interior and removed all the sound deadening material. That was a really smart choice. Then I removed all the adhesive material left over from the sound deadening. Now it was ready for primer, right? Well, why not stitch weld it up first? That's a good idea, right? Right. Rob got right to work and had that done in no time. And because this was going to be a race car, I figured why don't we just close off the trunk access from the interior? Another great idea. Couple coats of primer and bam! Fresh paint. The interior was looking great. So now the engine bay was looking good and the interior, but the trunk needs to be done next. And why not? And because we removed the fuel tank to weld, we figured it might be just as easy to put in a fuel cell. This was easily the worst decision I made on this car. But before you knew it, we had fresh paint and an optimum battery, and the fuel cell mounted. But there was still one thing bothering me, the wire loom. So I took it upon myself to rewire the entire car and take out any wires that we weren't using anymore, which saved me an entire 15 pounds. Next, I got a new RPM gauge and mounted it into the stock cluster. Along with that, I got some other gauges too. Finally, we're on to the engine. The engine teardown was easy, and it always is, it goes quick, but there was one thing wrong with it, and that's the turbo. Easily fixed. Bam! In comes the GT3070R. This turbo is beautiful. But with the new turbo I needed a new manifold, and with a new turbo I also need a new wastegate and blow-off valve. And with all that power from that turbo, we should get new connecting rods. And what better to connect them to than with new pistons, and bore out the engine 20 over while you're at it. And because we have more power with the pistons, we went ahead and added new ARP studs. Next, we added a new Greddy head gasket, and things were looking good. But I figured with that new turbo and new pistons, we're going to push a lot more air, so let's get the head ported. Another awesome idea. And because the head was ported and it flew more air, why not get new cams to go along with that? Now the engine was sitting sweet. And because the engine was torn down to this level, you should get a new water pump. So I got the Nismo N1 oil pump, and a new alternator. Everything was looking great. Then we topped that off with a new Greddy timing belt. The front of the engine was looking awesome, but because we wanted more air to get to the pistons, why not add on a new Greddy intake? I think this really helped make the engine look awesome, and I certainly approved of it. And so did Robert. Next step, cover the front of the engine with ugly black shields. Next, we added a lightweight flywheel and an ACT 6-puck unsprung clutch, which I forgot to take a picture of. Then we bolted on the transmission. Finally, it's time to put the engine back into the engine bay. I didn't need Robert's help with this, but he insisted on it anyway. And as with all engine swaps, this one went in perfectly. The first time with very little effort. Finally, the engine was mounted. Everything was looking great with plenty of clearance on all sides. Next, we test fitted the radiator fans, and then the most important piece, the turbo. We mounted that as quick as we could, and it looked awesome. Robert definitely approved. The one thing we couldn't do was the plumbing for the intercooler, so we had to pack it up and ship it out to a person that could. I love shipping my cars out to other people. When we got it back, all the plumbing was complete, the wastegate installed, and the intercooler was connected to our sweet Greddy intake. Finally, all the pieces that have been sitting around my garage for months are finally being installed. It was really exciting to finally get the fuel pump connected. Getting fuel pressure on the fuel rail was a major milestone. Next, we dropped in a CAS LSD, and while we were back there, we decided to install solid rear frame bushings. This really helps your ride quality. That is, if you like it rough. Finally, we were done, but not really. Off to the tuning shop. After a quick bite to eat, we were there. After tuning, the car put down 348 horsepower. Rob was really happy with this number. So now that the interior, trunk, and engine bay and engine look great, why not add on a body kit? And a lightweight hood. I had to take the car to a body shop to get this complete. While I was there, we also put on a wide body kit and a carbon fiber trunk. With all this being done, the car should look awesome when it's complete. And I think it did. I have to admit, I think I went a little overboard on this car. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I would just drop in the RB engine with the new engine mounts and not do anything else to it. But I also have to say the end result is really nice. I still think the car should have put down more horsepower, but 348 horsepower is pretty manageable on the street, so that is another good thing. And my license plate's funny. The interior came out okay, but I wish I left some of the sound deadening material in there. I made the center dash carbon fiber, and I think it turned out pretty good. Holds the gauges pretty nice. And there's carbon fiber door panels. On the street, it gets a lot of looks, but it's not the easiest car to drive. I took the car to a lot of car shows, and here are some other people's pictures of it that I found on the internet. I also took the car road racing at Summit Point, and I told my wife to pick a number that fits me perfectly. The car rubbed a little bit on hard corners, so that's why I didn't hit that apex, and that's my excuse, but it went really good on the straights. Here's me passing the vet and passing two other cars at once. I also took the car to some autocross events. How often can you race on the track and have LCACs with you too? Well, project's all done. That was fun. On to the next adventure. I ended up selling the car for $15,000 and hand delivered it to the person. These are the last pictures I have of the car. When I started the project, my garage looked like this, and towards the end, it turned into something like this. It was crazy. Unfortunately, I kept every single receipt I spent on the car. This is the grand total list. As you can see, I spent a lot of money on this car, and I really have to thank my wife for letting me continue this project to the end. One big lesson I learned about cars is to buy them already fast. Don't try to make them something that they're not. But if you're going to build a car, make sure you have a friend like Rob. Alright guys, here comes the grand total. Hold your breath and... Well, that's it everyone. Thanks for watching.